welcome everyone. I think the others will just tag along as we start. But yes, welcome. My name is Melody Patry. I am Advocacy Director at Access Now, and I've been working on the KeepItOn campaign even before actually I worked at Access Now. So I'm really honored to start this press briefing and to have this conversation today discussing the internet and elections, or actually the lack of internet during elections, which unfortunately seems to become a trend. So I'm here today with my colleague Felicia Antonio, who is the lead, who is coordinating the KeepItOn campaign. A lot of you have maybe have heard her via the Kill Switch podcasts, which we will be linking as part of the resources that are available. And then, of course, we have great speakers today who will be available to answer questions, and they will be introducing themselves and say a couple of remarks in a minute. But just as we're starting, I wanted to put a bit of context into the reason why we're having this press briefing, because at some point I was having a bit of a deja vu, and last year we had another press briefing also on internet shutdowns and elections. And unfortunately, the reason why we have another one this year with a similar theme is because what was last year, let's say like the premises and the beginning of the trend, is turning into a real concern that we have for democracy. We've been able to identify new patterns when it comes to internet shutdowns and election. And by internet shutdowns, we refer to like complete internet blackouts or kill switch, which is when governments completely pull the plug and disconnect the country, but also to when platforms are being censored, especially communications platform and information sharing platforms such as Twitter, Facebook, messaging platforms like WhatsApp, Signal, or Facebook Messenger, and so on. So the trends are moving, the environment is really moving when it comes to elections and shutdown. This year, we counted 50 incidents of internet disruption since the beginning of the year, so in the past 5-6 months really, and a few of them, of course, occurred during elections. That was the case in Uganda. We heard about Congo. So there were. It is a concern, and so I really want to make sure that we have this space to discuss many concerns, but also challenges, and if we have them, solutions. If you have specific questions for our speakers, they will present themselves and you will know exactly their area of expertise, as we have a few elections coming up, so it will be really relevant to hear from them and to also feel prepared. We actually launched a handbook on elections and shutdown, destined specifically for reporters covering elections and for elections monitors. So that's another resource that we'll be sharing with you all. And I think that's it in terms of housekeeping. This press conference is recorded, so you know, like, although we're not all in a room, but just consider that it's recorded, and the question and the answers will be publicly available afterwards. So if there is something maybe like sensitive that you would not want to be shared publicly, please be mindful that this is recorded and that there are other opportunities to also connect with the speakers and with Access Now. So without further ado, I'm just going to hand over to my colleague Felicia if she has extra words, and then we can immediately kick off with our great speakers and the questions that I hope you all have.
Yes, thank you very much, Melody, and welcome everyone. Quickly, as Melody said, this will be recorded, and we have our friends from the media joining us. So if you have questions, you have the option to turn on your camera and mute your mic and speak. If you're doing that, please introduce yourself and your organization or affiliation, and then you can also use the chat button, but we encourage you to use the video and mic so that the session is interactive as we go on. So I would quickly ask our speakers who have made time to join us to quickly take 2 to 3 minutes to introduce themselves. So you tell us your name, organization, and the current state of internet shutdowns in wherever you are speaking from. All right, so I would hand over to Amir to kickstart.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much, the organization Access Now and everyone who participated to this press conference. My name is Amir Rashidi. I'm the Director of Internet Security and Digital Rights at Mian Group, New York-based organization, human rights organization. We are working on violation of human rights, and definitely access to the internet is a rights for everyone. And we're trying to basically monitor the situation of internet in Iran from the perspective of connectivity to cyber attack, and provide as much as we can support for the civil society and activists, people who are at the risk, and minority, ethnic minorities inside the country. The current state of internet, the last internet shutdown we had was in February 2001 in province of Sistan and Balochistan for 3 days. Internet, mobile data, only mobile data was shut down, and almost every single year we have a shutdown in Iran. And yeah, I think for now that's it. We can go over the details later.
All right, thank you. I'll move to Richard, and one of our speakers is here to join us, so hopefully she'll be able to make it through. So I will move to Richard to introduce himself.
Thank you very much, Felicia, and greetings to everyone in the meeting. I will beg that I keep my video off so that I can leverage the bandwidth because I'm out of town. You know, in Zambia, the further you move away from the capital city, the quality of internet also deteriorates. So to avoid that disruption, I will beg that maybe I can just speak without the camera. Actually, I had to drive a few kilometers to access the network. I'm actually doing this from the car that we are using, you know. So I'll beg to do that. So, but anyway, my name is Mulonga Richard. I'm the team lead at Bloggers of Zambia. We are a growing enterprise in Zambia. Our work is primarily focused on 3 pillars: internet governance and digital rights, media rights and freedoms, and then online creative content and platform management. So do our work through campaigning, advocacy, trainings, and just everything that just influences law and policy, everything that draws attention to what we think must be done about making the internet accessible, you know, affordable, and to keep it on, to keep the internet on during all this time. In Zambia, we haven't had an internet shutdown. We usually put the word "yet" at the end because we are going towards an election, and the internet in Zambia has become a very special area of interest by the state. So they are weaponizing the narrative that Zambians are abusing social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter, where they are insulting and criticizing government leaders. And so they have come up with the Cyber Security and Cyber Crimes Act that has got several provisions that are parallel to the Constitution and other subsidiary laws, like Article 18 of the Constitution that guarantees and protects freedom of expression, and Article 17 of the Constitution that guarantees and protects the right to assembly. So There are also public order laws like the Public Order Act, the NGO Act, that are used, in the physical space to just stifle people's assembly and all that. So as we go towards an election, we expect the Cyber Security and Cyber Crimes Act actually to be used to shut down the internet, because we have seen examples are used like Uganda, Zimbabwe, and look what is happening there. So sometimes we think it is to maintain public order and hygiene, and it's better to switch off the internet. So it's shut down. But in the past, we have had like internet jamming, filtering, and website blockages. Like we have the Zambian watchdog that is really critical of the government. So we wouldn't access the website because service providers have been asked to block the access. So that is the synopsis where we are, and I will just pass the baton back to Felicia.
Thank you very much. So we, as speakers from countries that are having elections this year or have already had elections in 2021, and we're trying to see how we can strengthen our advocacy on internet shutdowns and elections. And so I would call on Harold to introduce himself.
Thanks, Felicia. You heard me? Okay. Thanks. I'm Harold Adaho. I'm an IT engineer, specialist of cyber governance organization, and president of Internet Society Benin chapter. So thank you for this opportunity to talk about internet shutdown and what we're going to fight it. So my organization is up. ISOC Benin is a national chapter of Internet Society, and our credo is and remains to defend an open internet, globally connect, accessible, and secure for all. And in Benin, we are done different things credo, full project and action with high impact. So our last action is to document all major events to internet as experienced in our country, full republication of the book of the history of internet in Benin from starting to present day. Sorry, this is good. And I'm making transition for this sentence to answer the last question. At Benin, Benin is relatively stable period in terms of internet shutdown, censorship of internet service. We have experienced a period of censorship, large increase with in internet access costs due to the over-recast from social networks, and a complete shutdown during the parliamentary election in April 2019. So this is just an introduction. I can come back to explain another stage.
Yes, definitely. Thank you very much. All right, so I would call on Marianne, my colleague, to introduce herself because she'll be stepping in while we wait for one of our speakers to join. So Marianne.
Yes, hi. I'm Marianne Diaz. I am a researcher from Venezuela, currently living in Chile. And I have been working on several issues regarding censorship and human rights, and basically the whole spectrum of human rights online for a decade now. And every time I say that, I feel very, very old. But right now I'm working on KeepItOn, on shutdowns, on internet disruptions. And it is a very important year for us in Latin America because we have elections all across the region. Venezuela itself has mega elections at the end of the year This is what we call mega elections, means that we get to choose, I can't vote, but we get to choose different stages of government. Chile, where I live, has two big elections this year. And we also have elections in Nicaragua. We just have Peru, Honduras, and the different kind of democracies across the region make it very different in the circumstances of a blockage and a general internet blackout of or internet censorship of certain sites can occur. So it's very different, for instance, what might happen right now in Colombia with the protest, or to what can happen in Chile or in Uruguay. And so we need to be very, very aware. But what a main trend that I would like to highlight is the use of infrastructural failure to disconnect regions, entire regions or towns or cities, or even the whole country, that has happened in Cuba a few times, which is extremely hard to track, extremely hard to attribute. And for us is a really big challenge that we need to be aware that it's going to be happening more and more in the coming year or so.
Thank you very much, Marianne, for stepping in to speak on what's happening in Latin America. Before we dive into the questions or the discussion properly, I want to remind our participants that you have the option to ask questions and contribute to the discussion. So you can use the raise hand chat button, and we'll be happy to call you to speak. And then for the speakers, also, we will be taking screenshots, if that is okay with you, in order to promote the session after we upload it on, we make it public. So please take notes. All right, I'm handing over to Melody to kickstart.
Sure, so as you saw, we've got representation from various regions, various continents around the world, because one of the conclusions that we were already able to draw after a few years of doing this campaigning and doing research related to the KeepItOn campaign is that no one is excluded, to be fair. Unfortunately, every region has been concerned by internet shutdowns during election. And so a first question that is quite broad and general, but to keep us started and maybe to put everyone on, to give like background context to everyone, is that we've noticed that governments have used internet shutdowns in a way or another, whether it's, as we said, like a total shutdowns or just like a targeted one, or the targeting of specific platforms. They've been doing this just before, during, and or after elections. So to all of our speakers, my question is, why do you think that governments are so quick to hit the kill switch during these important national events? What are they afraid of? What reason do they give? How do they match reality?
Can I go?
Okay, Richard, go ahead.
So in our case, from our experience, why the internet remains targeted is because our government would like to control our freedom. They would like to control our freedom of expression, assembly and association on the internet, that we should be limited in what we can do with the internet with regard to speaking truth to power, ensuring that there is transparency and accountability, to scrutinize those that are in leadership, to scrutinize those that are vying for political office, because people would use the traditional media, but it is so gagged, and the censorship and certain critical voices, actually, the civil society and journalists, radio stations here are closed without reason. Journalists are beaten when they write critical pieces. Some media houses actually attacked on live phone-ins because of what they said or who they are hosting. So as a result, everyone is going to the internet that is open and inclusive and participatory. And so the government doesn't like that people should be free to just, participate in the democracy. So you see, freedom of expression is the engine of democracy in our view, that without freedom of expression, democracy cannot function. Without participation and inclusion, democracy is dead. So our democracy is actually dying because the government doesn't want people to speak, people to offer their opinions and ideas. So the internet is at the center of this, and we are going into an election in less than 50 days. And the Inspector General of Police, the ministers, and just anyone who has access to the national broadcaster, they are threatening people who are abusing social media. Now, we have taken time to study what they're calling abuse of social media. These are just critical voices that are critical of the government, the president, his wife, and just all the wrong that is going on. So they don't like it, and they're calling it abuse of social media, that Zambians are insulting the president and his wife and the ministers. So the internet is a bad thing. It must be regulated, it must be controlled, and everyone who puts bad content like insulting the president must be arrested. And they are in the law that I talked about earlier on, the penalties are unrealistic. They are unjustifiable. They are harsh. They are too hard to comprehend, just for people who are exercising their right to freedom of expression on the internet. So that is our story.
May I add something from the time perspective to this good question? It's very clearly like the first factor that has a way in that is that governments want to restrict freedom of information because they don't want to, they don't want information about police abuse to get out. That's the first line, basically. But a second thing that I think we need to consider is that centralization in Latin America is a thing, an actual thing. Like, there is one ISP in most countries that holds 60% of traffic and is often controlled by government. It's public. And so it's very easy to use a kill switch in that provider, just in that provider, and radically reduce the capability of people to access the internet. And that seems very innocuous, like it's okay, this is something that we do in order for more people to be able to access the internet because infrastructure is expensive and then governments need to take care of that. But then it becomes very dangerous because it's very easy for them to do that without any kind of procedure. And this is something that repeats across the region. And it is very difficult to handle because it also means that there is no transparency at all when the shutdowns happen. There is no explanation. It's very difficult to run technical tests in order to find out what's happening. And it is a regional thing.
May I add one more point? So I think I totally agree with things that my colleagues and friends they said, and my experience is one of the reasons that they shut down the internet is because simply they want to shut down the communication. They don't want people to talk to each other, to mobilize, and basically to act against the whatever is the will of the government and the state. And now these days they shutting down the internet, but before that internet were really popular, and everyone in Iran had access to the internet back in 2009, the time that the Sila was in Iran, that we saw a really widespread, a national-wide protest after I would say that was the first widespread protest after the revolution in Iran. the internet was like, the main connection was dial-up, so it was not like really, and there were not really 3G and 4G back then in Iran. So what they did was shutting down the mobile phone and text messages. So you see that we are seeing this trend is shifting to the internet, because now internet is the main tools of communication between all of the activists and all the people who wants to protect their rights. So shutting down the communication with activists and people is one of the main goal. And of course they can have because they have the state media, they can have their own narrative, publishing their own narrative about what is going on and why people are protesting.
I actually have a follow-up question, Amir, about what you just said in terms of cutting access to communications, because in the past, and actually it's also related to what you said, Marianne, about centralization of internet service providers. We know that in a number of countries, there is also a centralization of the media, some of which also is controlled by government. And so I'd like to draw this parallel between, you know, like when governments were able to control and influence the media, in that case, the censorship or the control over the content was maybe a bit more pernicious, as opposed to what we're seeing now, which is when governments decide to censor the internet, not just via removing some websites here and there, but really shutting down the internet or shutting down part of the internet or part of the internet services. What can you say, like, what do you think it says about this new trend, which, or is it different? Is it the same thing? Because it feels, the perception feels different when you just don't have access. It's different to have access to something that has been, you know, like tampered with or controlled. So yeah, that was my question to you in terms of the differences and what do you think that means as a threat maybe, or as not so much of a threat to democracy and the electoral process?
Sure, that's a very good question. I mean, in a country like Iran, the state media, radio and TV, they are absolutely under control of the government. And by the government, I don't mean the administration and presidential office. I mean the office of the supreme leader. So it's like a level higher than a regular government that we talk about in countries. It's basically like kind of having king and then like another position. So they want to have absolute control over everything that people are hearing or watching. And this is not just about the news. It's about like a culture, movie, you know, like blocking Netflix. Obviously blocking Netflix is both sides because of the tech sanctions as well. But blocking like watching the live stream video and, you know, news, everything. But something that is completing basically this puzzle in Iran is the local infrastructure of the internet, the localization of the internet. So the goal in Iran is to tell people, to sell this idea to people that you don't need to access to the internet, or what they call it, international internet. You don't need to have access to that. You don't need to have access to anything outside the country. We are going to provide whatever you need inside Iran. And in order to sell that idea to the people, they are even subsidize the internet traffic in Iran. If you use the local services in Iran, you're paying half a price than using the international services. So that's include all the news media, all the news website, all the broadcasting inside the country, as well as communication tools, messaging apps, email services, and everything. So the final goal is to keep everything in, and right now 70% of internet traffic is local traffic inside the country. So we are not really far from being totally cut off from the rest of the world. So that's the main goal: localization and selling the idea to the people that whatever you need, news, communication, whatever you need is inside the country, and forget about the outside.
can you complete? Hello.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Please.
Okay. Just to complete, talking. The reason often given to justifying internet shutdown is to fight against the spread of fake news, to prevent dissemination of a message of incitation to hatred, call for popular increasing, and sometimes for reason of national security. I don't know. But that does correspond to reality of all, because internet penetration in my country, for experience, has not become a significant enough factor that could have explained the 2019 internet shutdown during the election. So we can constate this phenomenon is really growing now. Today, at almost every election in a country, we can expect an internet shutdown. The last example is Congo, Republic of Congo, where despite the campaign to prevent user simply cuts the internet of election day. So this is to say how recurrent that has become. Social media outlet primarily affect service and can easily bypass with a complex outage affect the entire network and has global impact that for just for its censorship. So it's I think so. Thanks.
Yes, thank you all for your submissions, and I do agree they resonate very well with the findings that we come across under the Keep It On campaign. And I normally say that the governments seem to be learning from each other. Once a government shuts down the internet during election, whether it solves the problems or the justifications they would normally give or not, another country would repeat something similar in response to elections. And one thing we've also noticed is the correlation between offline and online repression. So normally you know or have reports of journalists being arbitrarily detained or arrested, or human rights violations being perpetrated on the ground, and then shutdowns actually make it difficult for the same journalists, human rights defenders to access information around these human rights violations. And this is very dangerous for the human rights community. So before we continue the discussion, I just want to find out from our participants, do you have any questions at this point? And if you do, please raise your hand or unmute yourself and speak, if that's okay with you. Okay, Beatrice.
Hello, my name is Beatrice. I work for the BBC in the United Kingdom, and I've got a question for Marianne. You talked about infrastructure failures in South America, cutting off areas in terms of internet connectivity. Are you suggesting that the infrastructure failures because of lack of the genuine infrastructure failures because of lack of investment, and that is a threat to democracy? Or are you suggesting that they're deliberate infrastructure failures on the parts of government in order to shut down the internet?
That's an excellent question, Beatrice. Thank you. I am suggesting both. There is infrastructural failure that happens for lack of maintenance and for lack of investment. And this is a reality because we are mostly a poor region with variations somewhat drastic between country to country, but still poor. But as work that my colleagues have done and myself have done suggest, In some places, the lack of investment in infrastructure for telecommunications is a political decision. So if you are deciding to put that money into social control, into technology for social control, or into the military, instead of managing your infrastructure in a way that allows people to connect at an adequate level, then that's a political choice when you have a failure of that kind. On the other hand, in places like my country, which is a failed state, when you have a certain kind of infrastructural failure, and then they say, oh, this entire city was cut off from the internet for 3 days. At the same time, a protest was happening, and tanks were coming in to deal with the protesters, but there was an absolute blackout, so there's no information from that. But no, it was an iguana that ate the cable, because, as you know, in my country, iguanas like to eat cables, like it's very delicious to them. So that kind of infrastructure cut, it is very much not an accident. And when you are inside, I mean, it's still difficult to prove from a technical investigative standpoint, but for a person who is inside the blackout, it is very obvious. And it's very easy to see that it is intentional. So yes, I think that those two things are at place at the same time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Beatrice, for your question. Okay, I have another hand, Wilan. Sorry if I mispronounced your name.
No, that's fine. My name is Wieland van Dijk. I work for NRC in the Netherlands. And I have a question really for all the speakers. Thank you all for your interesting contributions. I was wondering that for a regime to shut down the internet, there's costs. It disrupts businesses. It takes down electronic banking. It's not something that you can easily do without harming your economy, the further economy outside the internet. And I was wondering if you're seeing regimes keeping that into account, developing their technical capabilities to limit these consequences. So, well, interested in your opinion on that.
Can I answer that?
Please do.
Thank you. Well, that's really very good question. I can speak about Iran. So your point is right, but it's interesting to know what Iran is doing to basically reduce that cost as much as possible. The entire reason that they created this local infrastructure, as they call it, National Information Network, or we usually address that like National Internet, right? But the official name is National Information Network. The entire reason that they want to localize everything inside the country is to reduce the cost of internet shutdown. The internet shutdown that we had in let me check my calendar. In November 2009, more than 12 days, actually was a test to see if they can reduce that cost. Because when they encourage people to come inside the country, use the local services and infrastructure, it was because when they shut down the internet, the local services, they can work. Like we have like Iranian Uber, Snap, that it was totally working. Online banking was totally working. And it's interesting to know there is an international angle that actually helped Iranian government to do that. You know, the US takes sanctions. When the entire basically encouraging program subsidized the traffic, everything that they did to encourage people to move inside the country and use the local services was a failure project simply because no one trusted the government. But because of the US tech sanctions, people were kicked out from the international infrastructures like AWS, DigitalOcean, and all of them. And the only solution, only option was moving back inside Iran. And that's actually the reason we are seeing in November shutdown that local services was working fine and they were happy. Actually, it was a test, and international services was inaccessible to the Iranian government. So the things that makes me honestly afraid and scared of the future of localization is not because of the technical infrastructure, which is good. It's good that you can access to the data fast and cheap. That the technical side is fine, but the policymaker, how they use this infrastructure makes me really scared to see the same pattern on other countries that is going to happen. It's going to be really, really a scary situation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Interesting.
Okay, we have Jian.
Hi, sorry, I didn't realize I had to use the raise hand feature in the chat, so I was waving my hand beforehand. To all the panelists, I have a question. So from what I've understood, there are in some cases some legal measures that are underpinning some of these shutdowns, such as, for instance, in Zambia. So I was wondering, in order to challenge shutdowns, is there any way to use courts? Is that effective? Are leaders in these countries going to really take notice? Or is the solution to this problem going to come from wider, I don't know, diplomatic pressure or technological disruption? What is going to end this? Are courtrooms going to be one way, or should we just wait for something new to arise, some kind of more decentralized internet structure, or I don't know, Biden being very angry?
Can I go from Zambia since it was mentioned?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So in Zambia, that is under what an ideal situation, in an ideal environment. The courts were supposed to have hope in the courts. Were supposed to have that relief. But that is not how it is, So you find the appointment of judges and how the judges behave when they're on the benches is very biased, and you can see the influence of the ruling elite in court decisions. So, but not all hope is lost. We currently have a petition before the courts, those who have challenged the Cybercrime and Cybersecurity Act, and sometimes you just have to do the action so that you exhaust all the processes. But the courts in Zambia, especially when it comes to such issues, they are not seem to be helpful because they seem to agree with the state. Because the courts are the old judges and all that, so they don't like the internet. They think the internet is a source of problems, social media and all that. So even if their rulings are not pro-internet freedoms. But in Zimbabwe, for example, they went to the courts and it was challenged based on the constitution and all that. So it's a 50-50 thing, but the confidence that the courts would protect our interests and all that is very low. It's very low because of what has happened in the past. There's very strong political influence in most of our lives, most of the public institutions here, because of intolerance, because of abuse of power, the departure from the rule of law, policy inconsistency and all that. So and most decisions are based on a political affiliation. So that is the problem we have. Maybe also I can respond to the other question, like the impact of internet shutdown. Like how do our leaders see it? So in Zambia, for as long as anything that threatens those that are among the ruling elite, it doesn't matter, but they'll just go ahead and make an unpopular decision. So even if the internet shutdown is costly on the economy here, they'll still do it and pretend that they did it because it was threatening national security and hygiene. And this is our argument. Like, what should we prioritize between national security and the freedoms, especially internet freedoms, because often the way the phrase national security actually does not befit what action is being discussed. So find that anything that someone says, or when there are these hackathons, when there are all these online protests, they say, no, this is threatening national security. And what is national security? Come on. Yes, national security, we want that because we want to be safe and secure. But also, what is national security in the absence of freedoms? You cannot have freedom without security. You cannot have security also in the absence of freedoms. So I find that the national security has been weaponized to inspire the invocation of all these orders to shut down internet, to legitimize all the wrong things, and doesn't matter whether that also has an effect on how the financial technology is running and just everything else. So the biggest problem we have here is that of growing repression and intolerance to divergent views and opinions. That is the only thing that matters, that those that are critical, they must not speak. And they can shut down the internet based on those criticisms. Very unfortunate, and that is it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Richard. We are running out of time, and so I just want to call Harold in. Benin had elections in April this year, and there was no internet shutdown. You did mention that the internet was disrupted in 2019 during parliamentary elections, but could you take us through what happened? And I have to be very miserly with my time, so can you use like 2 minutes to let us know what happened, what changed in Benin to ensure that there was no internet disruption?
Thanks, Felicia, for the question. To 2020, we received warning that a possible internet shutdown from municipal election. So it's last year, and for this year, it was the presidential election. So we decided to a series of proactive actions had to be taken to prevent a possible internet shutdown before, during, and after election. So for first action, we wish to KeepItOn with Felicia from Access Now to see the open letter that was being written, which was done, and I thank her for the opportunity. Secondly, we have posted on social network to promote a platform to fight against fake news. That way have helped to develop the internet community of Benin. We wrote and post on our website, supported by Internet Society Global, to explain the disastrous consequences that an internet shutdown would have on the country, both economically, financially, socially, politically, etc. We have made an interview with international radio, RFI, Radio France Internationale in French, to explain the prevailing situation and the concern we felt. We were feeling. So in locally for action with a coalition of other civil society organizations, we launched a very large campaign on social media with tips, posts, which explain each day a consequence of internet shutdown, a message of human rights that will not be respected if it happens. So this campaign, which began 9 days before election, less until the end at the elective periods. And we organize with another civil society organization a public conference to inform, raise, denounce a possible shutdown. And the day of election, we have set up a monitoring unit to detecting an internet cut. And we post it publicly, the state of network in the country. Each hour is we also wanted to initiate a press release to prevent, but we have no time. So that these the different action that we have put in place, and it was a great joy for us to see that until the day after election we had online and without major technical problem. So after election, it's okay. No change.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And it's always a great joy to see that people enjoy their rights on the internet, because the impacts of internet shutdowns are very devastating. And just to add on to what you said, the KeepItOn campaign, we have an elections tracker, which we launched beginning of this year. And so we have all the elections we have noted as high risk, that is risk of a shutdown happening at the time of those elections. And so it's on our website. My colleagues will share it in the chat as well. If you are in countries that are identified in this or not, and you anticipate an internet disruption, please feel free to reach out, and we are happy to work with you, or we would reach out to you to work with you. So I'll hand over to Melody to
sure, we
take
still
us
have
to the end.
Yes, of course, and we still have some questions on, but of course, if reporters in the room have questions, please raise your hands or wave, and we'll make sure to give you the virtual mic. And also just wanted to pinpoint that please do have a look at the chat and all of the resources that my colleague Felicia is sharing, including some positive news when it comes to court cases and court victories when it comes to internet shutdowns. It's something that we definitely want as a coalition to invest in a bit more and to put more resources behind. But of course, it depends on the context, and how we can rely or not on the judicial process. So I have a question to all speakers when it comes to, because we have several reporters in the room, and so how can journalists report on internet shutdowns and digital repression and support the work that you're doing? So I'm not asking about like tools that they can use to circumvent shutdowns and so on, like these tools. I mean, if there is interest, let me know. But we've published some material about it, and we're happy to. That would make us exceed the timeline, but more in terms of journalists and reporters working on that topic when they do cover elections. What would be helpful to your work, and how should they report on internet shutdowns?
I have things to say about that. It is important to me that when reporters cover internet shutdowns or any other kind of internet disruption, that they make space to tell the story of people affected by it. Because oftentimes they just focus on numbers, which is understandable because numbers are hard and facts, and journalists are all about facts. And facts are very important, of course, but if you tell me that, I don't know, 10,000 people were affected, it really doesn't sound like much for people. It sounds like it was a small village in some time. It depends, of course, on the people, on the country. But for those people, it is terrible. It is a lot. and it affects their livelihood, it affects their ability to study, it affects their ability to work more so during this pandemic. And if they give space to both, maybe to facts and also stories, but also stories are facts. They're just not numbers. And if you keep that in mind, I think it makes for a more comprehensive approach to reporting something like this. And it makes for people, for the general audience, more easy to understand why a shutdown is important, particularly for those that haven't lived through one.
Thank you, Marianne. Any other perspective from our speakers? What is helpful, what is not helpful?
One more point. Based on the experience of the last internet shutdown in province of Sistan Baluchistan in Iran, I think when it comes to like, so I think one of the best things that they can do is maybe it's our work actually to provide resources to let the journalists know who you need to listen to. Because in the last internet shutdown in Sistan Baluchistan, almost 3 days before the shutdown, some political opposition for their own political agenda, they said internet is shut down in Sistan Baluchistan, which was, we hadn't shut down back then. 3 days after that announcement, we had shut down. And the entire news was killed actually, just because of the false the internet shutdown announcement for their own political agenda. So I think you need to basically verify your sources to see if like some anonymous person on Twitter is saying it's shut down and these people are not living inside the country. So that's a problem when we need to basically pay attention to the horrible things that are happening. So I think listening to the real expert, local people, or like KeepItOn campaign, people, they have access to resources and access to the local activists. I think that's the most important thing journalists can do.
Thank you, Amir. Any thoughts from Richard maybe, or Harold, or has it all been covered?
Oh, sorry. I missed your question. Sorry.
Oh, no, sorry. I was just asking what would be helpful for your work when journalists report on internet shutdowns? So what is helpful in terms of maybe the information that they share or the people that they speak to?
Okay. About journalists reporting, it's crucial. It's crucial because they can help to streamline the dissemination of information, to educate citizens, ensure prevention, just like that.
Yeah, so, and from our perspective in Zambia, we feel even journalism itself is affected, is impacted by internet shutdown, whether it's filtering, jamming, and all that. Anything that restricts access to the internet or blocks access to the internet is detrimental to a free and an independent press. But with regard to the content and all that, the products of journalism, we think it's very important because it takes the information out there in order to influence internet law and policy. It informs the other people, it informs the stakeholders, it helps to increase the standards based on the regional and global norms on the right to internet access. We feel journalism plays a critical role in informing, in educating. We feel journalism is critical to all the narrative because it just creates that platform for engagement, that platform, like I said, for influencing and for networking, for people in the West, in the North, and everywhere to be able to know what is happening this side. so that we can be informed about the trends, and then we can come up with better advocacy and campaign strategies and just all that. So we feel it's very important to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I just want to, sorry, Felicia. I just wanted to quickly follow up on actually a few things that our speakers have shared when it comes to sharing data or sharing statistics, because whether it's the number of people affected, it's also the case for the number of shutdowns. And we've faced this because we publish this annual report and periodic updates about the number of shutdowns. And so if you look at the numbers since 2019, the numbers have been decreasing, which could, we could celebrate it and be like, yes, the KeepItOn campaign is doing great work and we have fewer shutdowns and it's less of an issue. But unfortunately, we can't celebrate in this way because while the number of shutdowns has reduced last year, for example, and since the beginning of the year, we've seen a dip as well compared to the first half of halves of the year of the previous years. But what we've noticed, however, is that the shutdowns last longer, or that the networks that are affected can maybe affect more people and so on. So it's always tricky, even for us working on this issue, to convey what exactly is happening or who exactly is impacted and what we can learn from and the different patterns when we look just at the numbers. And that's why that we're trying to always provide this additional context and this additional information when it comes to the nature of shutdown and their impact. And very often, actually, it's multiple impacts and multiple consequences. So just a quick note from me on sharing numbers and sharing statistics. But Felicia, over to you.
Yes, I actually wanted to add a suggestion that I think would also be relevant. We do have journalists or media that are very interested in the work that we do. So let's also proactively identify them or reach out to let them know our plans and the trends that we are noticing in our countries. And I'm sure they'll be interested in covering or listening to us once we need a platform to do that. All right. I have one question before we wrap up, Melody. And Amir and Richard, you have elections. Amir, we are working on the KeepItOn campaign for Iran, and the elections is on the 18th. So what should we expect? This is not to say we need you to predict what will happen, but then what does the landscape look like? And the same question to you, Richard. Your elections are scheduled for August, and we would be working with you on a campaign. So if you can also let us know what we should expect and how should we prepare to prevent a shutdown, that would be great.
Richard, you want to go ahead?
I can go, but I mean, you were mentioned first, so I'll go after you.
Thank you. So I think so far what we are seeing is it seems that the outcome of election is already decided. So because speaking of the going to the court for the shutdown, we don't have the rule of law in Iran, right? So going to the court, we don't have that kind of luxury, unfortunately, in Iran. So it seems that the outcome of election is clear. We know who is gonna win the election. And this person, definitely Ebrahim Raisi, he is not definitely in favor of internet freedom, and his team. I talked to a couple of people from his team on different rooms on Clubhouse, and it's clear that they are not in favor of internet freedom at all, and they are not familiar with the basic definition of the internet freedom. And right now, this person is important. Why? Because he is the head of the judiciary right now. So head of the judiciary right now is running for the presidency. And on his watch, basically, we saw that based on the judiciary order, they blocked Signal, they blocked Telegram, they blocked also Clubhouse is blocked on some of the mobile provider in Iran. Some of them they didn't block it, but clearly the head of the judiciary, they don't want to take any action in terms of if he's saying he's in favor of internet freedom in verbally, but he's not taking any action. And we are seeing kind of disruption on network in Iran based on the information that I'm receiving from different people, different basically circumvention tools developer and like IOTA map and things like that, that we are seeing kind of coordinated network disruption in Iran. So that's all of that together is concerning. As I think Richard said about the national security in Iran is the same, is the case as well. So when they see the national security is in danger, they would do anything to protect that national security. So again, having said all of these things, I think we can expect at least a disruption if people want to protest against the outcome of the election or in any shape and form. They are already contacting journalists and asking them to not criticize Ebrahim Raisi in any shape and form on social media, an article, everything. So the general atmosphere is a fear atmosphere. Again, this guy was in charge of mass execution after the revolution in Iran. I'm not really optimistic about the internet freedom, and I think we should be high alert for worst case scenario. Hopefully, no shutdown, but who knows? With this situation, everything is possible.
Thank you very much. And indeed, it's always important to be prepared. And I always say that it's a very nice feeling when you prepare very well and there's no internet shutdown. And that was the same feeling that Harold cited when there was no internet shutdown in Benin. All right, Richard.
Thank you, Felicia. So what do we expect in Zambia? Our elections are on August 12th. It's a date that is in the constitution. So every 5 years, we have elections on the 5th year, on August 5. So what we expect, and this is based on the trend, the statements, and how all these ICT laws in Zambia were, I beg your pardon, were fast-tracked in parliament. You know, they suspended all the standing orders, like the standard rules of making laws. They were suspended so that the ICT laws could quickly become law. And this is what happened. Like within a week, before we could blink and open our eyes, like, oh, we have ICT laws. So you can see that there are tools that would facilitate what the ways that we expect. Like one, we expect a total internet shutdown. And also, we expect many people to be arrested before, during, and even after the elections. And by the way, in addition to the, I'm saying this because in addition to the ICT laws that we have, the elections law, the Electoral Commission of Zambia Act, has been amended to include a section where it is the only institution that will have the legal mandate to announce election results at any level. So in Zambia, we have got people transmitting elections from polling stations, from the polling centers, and they're sharing and they're comparing the numbers and all this and that. So with the amendment of the Elections Act, all that is going to become illegal, whether you do it in Twitter, on Facebook, or in WhatsApp. So you can see that all of us who like to do this, because at Bloggers of Zambia, we monitor elections using technology. So we'll have like totaling centers, we have monitoring electoral malpractices and transmitting results like number verifications and all that. So all that work is going to be illegal, but we're still going to do it anyway. So you should look out for our names in the media like, oh, these guys have been arrested. So that is what we expect: shutdowns, arrests, all these prosecutions. So with what we need and perhaps what we are doing, what is happening. So we need to capacitate civil society, journalists, and lawyers and artists with digital hygiene, like practical. We are trying to prepare people with the VSAT, like VSAT. We are preparing the cohort like to just keep a certain people online and mount the campaign, because it's just gonna be vicious, and we think that kind of skill, that kind of knowledge is needed in order to just prepare about all these negative expectations coming out of this, because of the deep interest, the deep campaign against internet freedoms that is going on in Zambia. So that is it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, we'll be in touch with all of you to work around the elections. All right, over to you, Melody.
Yes, I don't see any more raised hands from the attendees. So I think we're ready to wrap up. As discussed, we are available as a community, as the KeepItOn coalition. So Access Now, but also all the members of the KeepItOn coalition are always more than happy to answer to specific queries, or we also have a digital security helpline. If you need support in terms of securing your communication, or support to prepare ahead of an internet shutdown, if you're in a country that is likely to shut down the internet. So our helpline is always available to members of independent media, and it's free. It's a free service for civil society. So please, although this is the end of this press briefing, if you've got any more questions as you are preparing your PCs and more, reach out to us, and let's stay connected if we can to KeepItOn. Thank you very much to all of our speakers, and thank you everyone for attending. We really believe that this is such an important issue, and so that's why just having the opportunity to discuss it, and we're always pleased when we see shutdowns mentioned and reported on the media, not for our ego and not just for our own the pleasure of seeing our work in the press, or the issues that we care about in the press, but really because we know that shutting access to the internet, the primary goal of that is to disconnect people and to make them lose their voice and to make them lose their ability to share information, very often with the outside world, but sometimes even internally. And so, of course, when there is a lot of media coverage, it kind of defeats the purpose. Sometimes it proves to be a completely unproductive technique. So we believe that actually journalists are part of the solution when it comes to the fight for KeepItOn. So thank you very much for joining, and let's stay in touch if you have any more questions. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you for
Goodbye.
this opportunity.